cannabis industry, actually. Before this, my background's on the medical side, so I used to be on the clinical operations side of things. So I used to run a lot of business operations previously in non-cannabis health-related matters. And it's so challenging because a lot of what you see is saturated and there's not as much innovation. But this industry is unique. And part of the reason that got me to stick around this industry is that you can still think of things that haven't been thought of yet and implement them. And so when we decided to launch our business, MBC, we did it for a purpose. Obviously, we saw a problem out there and we had a solution for it. And we decided to solve a real problem that we thought was important. Now, cannabis is unique in a way. When we came into this industry, it was actually consulting on the medical side of the industry. It's one of the few businesses that you see where you cannot legally access the marketplace for purchasing product as easy as it is in other industries. There was a conversation before with in the legal panel about physicians and access and finding things. And we completely agree. And coming from the medical world, we see the problems why we think physicians are having trouble getting into this industry. So our problem that we aim to solve at NBC was effectively just that. So our platform was built to help patients take control of their medical case and manage their relationships with physicians so that they could get access to supportive doctors and knowledgeable doctors that could help them get access to medical document if they qualified and help them through the process and then go from there. So we know that in 2014 switched over. There's hundreds of thousands of patients who use cannabis medically, but look at the numbers of the people in the new industry regulations. And the way that's going to change is if you have more access into the industry. So as a tool, we said, let's give our physicians the confidence to prescribe. So we come from our side, the medical background, and working in the EMR space with medical records. Physicians are used to a certain way of doing things. And so you have to give them the same level of knowledge that they're used to so that they feel more comfortable doing what they always did. So our clinical system effectively acts like a tool for doctors to know how to properly assess, gauge, determine if the patient qualified, give them the comfort from a college perspective so they feel more confident. And we came up with a question. We said, if we do this and do this well, can we get more doctors to start prescribing? So we launched our platform the early part of this year. And in the course of 8 months, we've had our physicians who've used our platform on a beta test see probably a little over 1,000 patients now, and we've onboarded about 8 physicians in the last 8 months who have offered to try the platform, which is great. So now we got to answer the question and say, okay, so we give them a tool that gives them more confidence, now they'll create more access. Now how do we get more access going? So now I think as we build up and as we grow, there's a long road ahead of us, and I think we're building there. We now have, I'm happy to say, we're now in Canada and the US. We have probably close to about 25 to 30 or so clinics using the platform now. So when patients go online, they're able to find these clinics. There's close to about 50 to 60 physicians that'll be onboarded into this. And the whole goal of this is to provide patients access. And so now if you want to see if you qualify and you live in a rural community, well, now you can go onto a platform and you can find a doctor that's willing to work with you, and you can connect to them virtually or you can go in person and hope that that relationship builds into something that gives you access into the system. So we see the end goal as bring the cannabis industry into the same legitimate type of industry that you get in other services, where you can access a marketplace, where you can access suppliers and you can get product and it's legal to do it. But the only way to get there right now is hopefully increase the number of physicians. So, I'd say as someone who's trying something in the industry and trying to prove it, Alex told me to say a few things that I think would make a difference for entrepreneurs out there. So having done it before and doing it again in a completely different industry, the first thing I'd say is know your game really well. Like know the industry, know what you're doing, know the problem you're solving. The second thing is cannabis is so exciting because the industry is always changing and there's so many different things that you could be doing. And we're sitting at the table going, hey, this would be really cool if we could do this as well. And focus is so important because it's so easy to get distracted when you're running something and you see all these other opportunities starting to pop up. And so for us, the challenge and part of the biggest learnings that we've had is just staying focused on what it is that we're trying to do and the problem we're trying to solve, and then building it up from there. I don't know, I think I covered 10 minutes, so I'll pass it on to you, Real.
All right, thanks. So Actually, it's a nice transition because I think building up the market is where my interest lies. Just for context, I've been a marketer for 25 odd years. I've been very involved in building communities, especially through membership. Even as early as the mid-90s, I was doing promotions that were very cool.
Can't hear you.
Give it to Ria.
Test. Hello?
Yeah, try this one.
Oh, no, I got it on. Hi. All right. Now we're going to get it all personal. So I have built a variety of communities since the 90s that were very commerce-oriented. In the mid-90s, I ran a society called Undernet, which was a ticketing system in the rave scene that was very instrumental in actually changing bylaws in Vancouver, and we were very powerful as a group. And I guess I've taken that experience and built other organizations in other areas. And last year, I had an epiphany at the top of a mountain, literally in Utah, when I met with a bunch of people from Colorado that were just these incredibly enlightened, fun, earnest business people that when I had been dealing in real estate for the last 10 years or so seemed to be almost like a divine light. And I suddenly realized, wow, why am I not involved in the weed scene? I love weed. And so last November, I started social media as essentially just the same idea that I have executed in other places, which is everybody needs a place to stand there and talk about their business and have a way to connect with customers. And on the flip side, the consumers need somewhere to be able to learn. So it's nothing new. It's funny that I got replaced for the Leafly guy, because I guess I'm the startup Leafly, but not Leafly as big as Leafly or as funded. We try to run up the middle. What we're doing is really focusing on getting user reviews, particularly in social situations. So that's why any of you who walked through, you might have seen that we had a little interview station set up at our booth. So that's essentially to give anybody the chance to have their 5 minutes of fame, if you will, and then they'll be able to experience some of our tools in terms of promoting that and monetizing it with points and being able to incentivize your audience to talk about your product, basically. So that's where getting people to tell your story for you is much more powerful than you standing there and telling your story. And I guess that's where I want to take social media, and where I think the industry from a perception point of view, as much as the medical focus right now from a legal standpoint is important. And Jodie, the activism that you and your husband have done over the last 20 years, of course, wouldn't have put us all in a situation where this is even a discussion. It's happening in a nice fancy hotel and with a whole variety of VCs and everybody else. But the conversation now has to become a commonplace one that isn't stereotyped in any of these groups. It's like beer or wine or chips or movies or anything. It's just part of society, and people make a choice, and it's embedded in lifestyle now, right? So the age of defining your brand and finding your niche and a voice is where I think the innovation is going to happen next, and where I'm very comfortable in the gray market, so I'm building brands that are not LP based, but will either be acquired by LPs eventually, or will be competing with them in whatever new architecture ends up being handed down upon us from on high. So that's who I am, and I'm happy to answer questions with anybody. Everybody here, by the way, social media is a closed, invite-only network, so there's a hotspot. If you look on your phone, you may see it in here. You can definitely see it in there. So you join on the hotspot when you're in a retail location, or by referral from a friend. You can't just sign up from the web. So that's again how we're kind of differentiating ourselves. So please feel free to join before you leave, or you'll never be able to join again. No fear of loss or anything.
My name is Jodie Emery, and I got into the cannabis business side of things in a unique way.
My husband was facing prison in a foreign country and I had to take over the empire he built. So that was a unique introduction, but my experience is in magazine editing for Cannabis Culture, and now I'm the owner of the Cannabis Culture business. That includes Cannabis Culture as a head shop for your vaporizers and all the old bongs. If anyone still uses a bong, we sell those. We've also got the Vapor Lounge model we've been doing for 10 years. It's a venue where you can pay $5 an hour to use a vaporizer or smoke in our lounge type space, and we started that 10 years ago. Then we've got Pot TV, which was started as one of the first video websites ever in the year 2000. It was launched at the same time as CBC television. So, very few people even had modems that could watch video, but Pot TV was one of the earliest, and we still do media today. And we've got our latest venture, Cannabis Culture, cannabis shops. I think, to my knowledge, we're the only chain or shops of any kind in North America that advertise as being for all adults, recreational, in an illegal environment. I mean, I know there are legal states, obviously. I helped campaign for some of them, but we are breaking the law with peaceful civil disobedience. And that's how Mark Emery started this activism and got Canada moving, or kick-started back in 1994, by breaking the law. Because unfortunately, when it comes to marijuana, only breaking the law has changed the law in the earlier periods. And the great lawyers you saw up here, John Conroy and Kirk, and these guys made it happen because people broke the law, got arrested, and went to court. That was always Mark's model, and Cannabis Culture magazine and the stores and the lounges, and Mark Emery Direct Seeds, which was selling seeds all over the world to anyone, anywhere, when you couldn't get seeds from any place without getting in trouble. And Mark did that to raise money for activism, and he used the model of capitalism to finance activism, because you need money to be able to finance any sort of political or charitable organization or effort. So the idea of using this money, you need money, and in the marijuana world, marijuana and seeds are valuable because prohibition increases the risk, and when the risk goes up, so too does the reward. So Mark thought, well, if marijuana seeds are valuable, we can sell these seeds, use the profits to finance reform, and inspire others. And he did, all across Canada in the 80s. Head shops were shut down and raided, and you couldn't find bongs or books or magazines anywhere because of the government's crackdown. So Mark started disrupting that. And by the way, all books and magazines about marijuana are still illegal in Canada, section 462.2 of the Criminal Code. So the booklet you got to come here, that's illegal. Everything printed with a pot leaf on it, it's illegal. But the law is enforced in an unfair and, very arbitrary manner. So being in this business means being willing to take a risk. And we've had raids, we've had employees arrested, we have charges against some of our brave activist employees, and we're not going to give up, because we believe that in order to really push forward, you have to demonstrate what you want. And we're demonstrating what legalization should look like. It should look like the oldest model we're all familiar with that nobody talks about, Amsterdam, where adults can go into a shop, buy marijuana, use it there, take it home. You don't need to go get cancer first. You don't need to pay a doctor for permission. You can be a regular citizen and go into a weed store, and it's just like a bar, and it's just like a caffeine coffee shop. You can buy it there, you can take it away. You can use it with like-minded people, and that's what we should have. But instead, we're seeing a model that is still based on prohibition. The government has oppressed millions and millions of people, and they don't want to admit that it was all for nothing. It's one thing to arrest people for something that's benign. It's another thing to arrest people for something that can save lives. And this government does not want to admit that the millions of lives destroyed and the trillions of tax dollars wasted was for something that is totally unjust and doubly evil, because it's wrong to arrest people for this plant. And I'm sorry I keep getting so angry, and people are probably tired of hearing me rant, but when you spent years in the court system and in the prison cells, and you've seen children crying, when they visit their dad who's in there for pot. This issue is more important than business. So for us, when we saw these regulations come into place, and in Washington where you can buy it, but you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't use it there. And you know, I'm hearing about, you can buy marijuana in Colorado and different places, but where can you use it? Why are we still treated like some sort of deviants who need to either hide away at home, where you're probably going to get in trouble from your landlord or your fellow neighbors, or to try and go hide in the streets and smoke it outside? Why can't we have equality? So that's what cannabis culture has always fought for, and right now our model is you can be an adult, 19 and older, you can come to our shops, you don't need to register, you don't need to sign up, you don't need to see a doctor, you don't need to be sick. We're not going to discriminate against anybody, because legalization should be all adults getting equal access to cannabis in a fair way that is not going to force them to put their information at risk or to have to lie about being sick. Now, this is not a model that is embraced because, as we know, and as I respect, many medical dispensaries only operate because they have a sort of protection under the court orders and decisions that have come in the past. So dispensaries are like, well, maybe if we're medical only and we make them see a doctor and we keep all their information, maybe we won't get raided. Maybe if we try and show that we're not criminals, we're not thugs, we're not, bad people, we're going to try and be as legitimate as possible. And yet, they're still criminalized and still raided. And again, arrests are happening every day. And our own employees currently have charges in Toronto. But we aren't going to stop because, like Mark Emery's early model, way before George Soros or any other donors were giving money to marijuana activism, you need to break the law to demonstrate what you want and to demonstrate that we are peaceful, nonviolent people, and any sort of attempt to oppress us or deny us our equal rights is unjust. And cannabis is a disruptor. That's why everybody's struggling with this right now. That's why there's such a strange mix of big money corporate and the old hippies, and it's difficult because this isn't like any other industry. It's not the dot-com boom. It's not the craft beer industry. It's an industry that already exists. It's already there. It's already worth billions. It's already employing millions. It's already serving the needs of people. It's just all criminalized. So you can't have this industry taken from a group and given to another. I mean, you can expand it. We can all be part of it, but you can't really divert it. And that's why cannabis is different from any major new market. I mean, have you seen the marijuana news? It's endless. It's endless. You can't go a day without 5 news stories about marijuana. It's because it's popular. It's because people want it. And the reason it's everywhere is because of supply and demand. People want it, they're going to get it, and someone's going to supply it. And that's why it's so popular right now. But it's a disruptor to the whole model of everything. That's why cannabis starts to make you question everything. And I love what Ed Rosenthal had to say about that. Get outside the box. Because right now, marijuana dispensaries are starting to make people question, I hope, over-regulation. Why do we need all these inspectors? Why do we need all these extreme costs and measurements and criminal records and this? Like, why do we need all that bureaucracy?
Well, and I think, and shouldn't that be much more of a local decision and not a national decision?
Right, but even locally, I mean, most of the laws that govern our lives is a local
But look
level.
at the difference between Vancouver and Toronto and how the two cities have been treating the dispensary proliferation, if you will, right?
Well, Vancouver's got a really long history of setting a model, and poor Toronto had a sudden explosion of dispensaries.
Of course, and they have some local pressure to play good, let's say, for the higher up. So through that explosive growth, they're being pressured to the local decision of whether to allow communities to profit. I mean, look at all the empty malls that need local businesses.
Exactly.
It's an easy play that if left to local governance is can very quietly be dealt with at a local level.
But local governments are always looking up. They're looking up for more money. They're looking up for more of this and that. So they're looking to the government, the feds. What do we do? They say.
They should look to the green.
They should look to the people that pay their salaries, maybe, and all the money that they spend, since that's their job. But listen, we're a disruptor because a lot of things right now, including the Western style of medicine and the pharmaceutical model, with doctors just writing scripts left, right, and center, and people not having control of their health, and the idea of being a small local business owner and the ability to have an equal opportunity, whether you're a woman or of a minority group. Cannabis disrupts all of the thinking and all the traditional ways things have operated, and so that's why it's not working so well with this push to like get into these regulations and fit into this box. I just think the plant does not want to be manipulated like that, and that's why the plant is not going to treat well those who are in it for profit alone and who do not understand that using force to force people to buy your cannabis over other cannabis is not going to work for them. And unfortunately for us though, those big forces, like with every industry, they want to use law enforcement and government to criminalize their competition. And we see in Canada, we're a nation of overregulation when it comes to our cell phones and our media channels. It all gets like sucked into just one mega corp, and that we see that happening everywhere. It's the unfortunate nature of things. And cannabis is just not going to go that way because it's always going to stay underground with the people, and no matter how hard they try to overregulate it or arrest us or give us fees and licensing violations, I mean, I'm sick and tired of us being treated like we're some sort of toxic threat to society. And in fact, a lot of the regulations from the feds down to the local are treating marijuana like it's dangerous. And a lot of activists are even sort of saying, well, yeah, we do have to be concerned about the threat to public safety. There is no threat to public safety. Cannabis use will reduce the abuse and harm we're costing from pharmaceuticals and alcohol alike. Cannabis is going to actually save society, but not if it's going to be overregulated.